I want to share a project that we did for the Nevada Museum of Art, and I kind of want to take you guys through the process and methodology that we used in order to generate a visual language that has strong transmedia aspirations. The process involved a lot of flying out to Reno, Nevada to really talk to the staff and to really kind of discuss where they envisioned the museum going in the future. So the process was very transparent, and all the staff had a strong, were strong stakeholders in the work that we did. And David Walker is the director of the museum, and also was a part of the Art Center family for years and years and years. And so it was a really great opportunity to kind of work with him. These are some of the outcomes that I'll show you guys a little bit later, but I really want to dive into process and methodology. Like maybe that's interesting too. So what we did was we put together a series of presentation booklets because we feel like process has narrative value and there's a story behind the forms that you create. The first booklet played with the idea of naming practices, abbreviation practices, taking this big, long, formal name and finding ways to truncate it and make it smaller. We discussed the idea of logo type versus logo mark. And then we looked at the idea of abbreviation practices. We wanted to think about a few things in terms of criteria. What does it sound like? What does it look like? What are its connotations? Is it an acronym? Is it original? Would a website address be available for it? So these are some of the solutions that we came up with. We thought Nevada art could be interesting. Nav art could be interesting. NEMA had potential. NMA is what they were using when we started the project. And then the most radical truncation of all, which is just the N. So then we weighed out whether or not they would work okay. Nevada art was kind of interesting, but its direct denotation of Nevada could be limiting for a museum that had international aspirations. Nav art was kind of cool too. We liked that the form of it had some bilateral symmetry, and that it could work as a naming system. So that one had potential. NEMA felt a little bit too close to MoMA and MoCA and MoPA. So wasn't quite original enough for us. NMA was pretty safe to work with, but we really gravitated towards the idea of the N. We took the staff through where these letter forms came from. Where did the N evolve from? Where did the A take its shape? Why is the M so wave-like? And then we wanted to look at the exoskeleton of these specific letter forms because typography, as many of you guys know, that's kind of like the genetic code for a visual identity. And so they're good ends and they're bad ends. Helvetica, anyone? We didn't like the way that Helvetica's diagonal strokes connected to its vertical strokes, so we ruled that one out. I can never pronounce universe correctly, so I also had to dismiss that one. Univer. We thought that Gotham, sorry, I couldn't resist. We thought that Gotham had a lot of potential. It's a real workman-like typeface. So the second booklet played with the idea of the N, and the museum positions itself in the artwork different from other museums because it has a strong interest in the relationship of art and environment. We like what the N signified. We like that it played with the idea of a high degree of power, something that related to the utmost degree or extent. We had a tough decision to make in terms of whether we wanted to use hard elbows or soft elbows. The staff loved the idea of soft elbows, so we went in that direction. But there are a few questions that we thought we'd ask ourselves as we were working with it, and just anticipating the idea of where logotype how it might live in the future. So does a logotype have to be a fixed mark frozen in time? Can a logo act as a gallery space? Can a logo react to changing contexts? Can a logo have a dialogue with its surroundings? And lastly, can a logo tell the temperature? A lot of the inspiration for some of these forms came from artists that were a part of the museum's curatorial agenda. Vito Acunci is always very interesting. He talks about the gallery space as an interesting kind of changeable and adjustable setting. So we thought, could a logo be like that too? So we broke the N down into 165 different interchangeable units. And we played with the idea of different figures and shapes and filling up those units. I really liked this one at the time. Fritz Haig is also a large part of the curatorial agenda. His work is very interesting. He's been a part of the Art and Environment Conference for the inaugural conference in 2008, and also the one that's going to happen this year, in 2011. He talks about the idea of a garden being designed to respond to unique characteristics of a site, especially the local climate and geography. So we thought, can a logo respond to local climate and geography? Can a logo tell the temperature? We couldn't resist the temptation of rendering the museum itself in ends. And so, you guys, often in class I talk about the idea of how the tools that we use inform the marks that we make. And this tool is a little plugin for Illustrator called Scriptographer that uses just basic algorithms to generate form. So this booklet just plays with the idea of the logo telling the temperature. So we assigned color value to different temperature gradients. This is January. Again, can a logo respond to the unique characteristics of a site and its climate? January, February, March, April, and on and on. I only have 15 minutes here, folks. The next booklet talked about the idea of working with the NMA, Open Dialogue, Closed Monday, and Tuesday, actually. That's the building itself. We found that the numerals 1, 2, 3, 4 actually, when rotated on their side, create an NMA. We thought that was kind of funny. We played with the idea of removing the crossbar so it would react to the surrounding mountainous landscape in Reno. The architecture of the museum is based upon an outcropping in the desert, and that outcropping is defined by a 7.5-degree angle. So we thought we would bring that into play too. Again, the museum's strong interest in art and environment kind of inspired us to work with landforms and strata. So symmetrical folds, chevron folds, and the idea of letter forms being derived from those landforms. Cattle brands and ligatures. So cattle brands are emblematic of the American West, and we couldn't resist the temptation of working with cattle brands and playing with that kind of visual language. This is the orphanage. This is where all the ideas go when they don't quite make the final cut. We always have a feeling of remorse at the end when we have to cut these, so I thought I would share them with the museum staff, just so they knew how hard I worked on this project. This is inspired by the concept of anamorphosis, where the viewer has to occupy a particular perspective in space in order to render the letter forms legible. This plays with the idea of reducing the museum's architecture and coloration to abstract proportional fields, color fields. This booklet plays with the idea of NavArt as a linguistic modifier and naming system. So NavArt, NavNow, NavNews, et cetera, et cetera. The idea that the mark itself could generate forms that can then be used for a visual vocabulary. Also the idea that this linguistic modifier could also inspire membership nomenclature, and to make that a little bit more friendly and street level and less serious. I would love to be a Nev bud, but probably not a Nev student. This one plays with the idea of embracing all 17 letter forms. That's another image of the facade of the museum. Again, working off the idea of strata. This is the biggest little typeface. Reno is known as the biggest little city, biggest little town, and it has a really rich typographic heritage rooted in neon signs. And so we couldn't resist the temptation of designing a typeface based upon that neon signage. And those little icons play with stereotypes of Reno. What we found is that most of the stereotypes that folks have of Reno are in many ways untrue. We found it to be a very dynamic place, and the folks, at least that were a part of the museum, took great pride in the idea of art and community and the intersection of creative interests in folks and all that kind of stuff. So we have just kind of playing with those icons. This is the first attempt at branding for the Art and Environment Conference. This last presentation booklet played with the idea of geothermal form studies. What we found was that the Nevada region was one of the leaders in geothermal energy resources and research. And we were really kind of intrigued by these maps which describe little pockets of heat by analyzing magnetic fields below the surface. We want to translate this mapping into the potential energy of typographic form. I'm seeing a face inside this right now. I don't know about you guys. So that was our process. That was a part of our presentation booklets to the museum. And so this is where these things ended up. Actually, again, playing with Keynote, stacking them all up again. This is where we ended up. We chose to work with a silver and an orange. A silver to respond to Nevada's mining heritage. We felt like that was kind of interesting, kind of neat. The orange is something that I responded to in doing some research, and in particular, the artist and photographer David Mazel talks about orange signifying the undoing of the natural landscape. So we thought that was kind of an interesting color to work with. This is the back of the business card. This is the logo type. Business card letterhead. And we didn't have this, we did all this stuff during a period in history that was really strapped for cash. Back in 2008 with the economic downturn. So the letterhead itself is just one color. Next, we wanted to work on the museum's web presence. And so again, we wanted to play with the idea that the website, which is a dynamic environment, could be linked to a database that would allow it to change color according to the outside temperature. We also wanted to play with the idea of a calendar inside a kind of screen-based dynamic environment. And we wanted to push against the idea that a calendar has to be a series of rows and columns. So we play with the idea of a horizontal way to kind of measure and move through time. And we found that it really helped to save some space in the because real estate in a web environment is so precious. And so we thought this was kind of a neat idea. These are screenshots from yesterday. And it was wondrously cold. So if you look at the logo type in that corner right there, you guys, you'll see it, maybe it'll show up. You'll see it move from a green to a blue. This is the visual identity for the Art and Environment Conference. Advertisement and art forum. This is a catalog that we just finished. This catalog is called the Envision Catalog. And it was really a chance for the museum to introduce itself to the world again and to lay out its strategic initiatives for the next 10, 15 years. Playing around with the idea of a die cut, that this geothermal energy exists below the strata of paper on the outside cover. And then working with the N as a naming system or linguistic modifier. So we have inform, innovate, engage, and really, how can you resist a small child staring back at you? So we really couldn't. So precious. And their mission statement talks about the idea that they're a museum of ideas. And they really are. David's really done a great job in kind of pushing this museum and putting it on the map. There's our museum rendered in ends. On the back of the catalog, in celebration of the museum's 80th anniversary, we put together an information graphic which illustrates 80 years of snowfall. The founder of the museum, Dr. Edward Church, was a scientist. And his big thing was in the invention of the first instrument for measuring water content of snow and predicting stream flows, which is really important to water usage and agriculture. And we thought that was kind of cool. It snowed a lot in 2005 and hardly any in 2007. This is a shot of the museum along with some building signage. The bane of my existence over the past 3 or 4 months. The altered landscape photograph of a changing landscape has been a book that we've been working on for the last good little while. And so we wanted to look at a couple different things, the potential of a book media type to play around with the idea of book as kind of a sculpture, book as a kind of film, and also book as sorting mechanism, permanent collection as database. Because this book is really a chance for the museum to, kind of put together its permanent collection in relation to art and environment and share it with the world. So the whole entire permanent collection is on the spine of the book. And, if we really reduce what we do to the landscape, there are 2 things that we do. We're either taking from it or adding to it. And so the letter forms are debossed, blind deboss, and then a blind embossment. So this is a prototype that we submitted to Rizzoli. And the book will be produced hopefully in September. This is our title page, or half title page rather. And the narrative, the sequence of images were put together in relation to each other using the logic of a spiral, which also plays off Robert Smithson's spiral jetty, and also a lot of the petroglyphs that you can see in the photographs within the narrative and in the book. The first image the viewer sees, the reader sees, is this image. And we felt like this was a metaphor for crossing kind of the breach of this threshold, of entering into the space of the book. And so we went through all the images and studied them and tried to figure out their similarities and their differences. And we found that we wanted to start the narrative in the wintertime under the cover of nighttime. This is an image of Dubai at night, oil money, the Alaskan pipeline. Within the permanent collection, there were only 2 logos, and they were both of a 76 station. So we're linking these images either through meaning or through similar formal characteristics. Again, book is film. We felt like we were editing a film for the past 3 or 4 months. And again, using these large typographic statements. Bertinsky's pile of tires, followed by inner tube rafting in the Sacramento River, followed by the potential of great danger, This is an image of the photographer David Maisel that we just really find kind of beautiful. That was an image of Owens Lake, which had been greatly kind of damaged by chemicals and water usage issues. There's no essays until the middle of the narrative. We felt like this was crossing another threshold, and so we thought that the image of the deer being caught in the fence would be kind of interesting. Some typography from the essay. Oh, so this is the last page. It's, I won't even go into what it actually is. It's a piss pole in Antarctica. There you go. Pizza. I want to show this project really quickly, and I mean quickly. It's a little catalog that we did for Chris Jury, and the type is based upon mushroom spores. But there was a quote by Chris Jury that I felt like was really interesting and described our process. He talks about the process being the most valuable thing. The way that making a work with people changes you and changes the people probably has more important than the actual objects left behind. And so for me personally, the idea of process is more important than end product. Method and all that kind of stuff, research, those things invigorate me and kind of inspire me. But also the relationships that you form with the people that you work with. And so that's the end.